My name is Beth. I'm the adult programming librarian for the system, and we've got Angie here this evening, who is our Reader Services Librarian. Before we get started tonight, I did want to mention a couple of items that we have for upcoming programs. So I'm going to share my screen here. And the first program I wanted to mention is Agatha Christie, the Queen of Mystery. That is a virtual program on Zoom on August 22nd at 6:30. But Agatha Christie's novels have sold over 2 billion copies, and we're going to be joined by Dr. William Thierfelder to discuss the life of this remarkable writer and why she remains popular today. Uh, that one, you do have to register to receive the Zoom link. The next program I want to mention is on September 5th at 7, also on Zoom. We're going to be joined by historian Annette Isaacs, who will be talking about Margaret Steiff, the woman who invented the teddy bear, as it became popularly known after Teddy Roosevelt. So that should be an interesting program as well. On September 11th at 7 on Facebook, we will have artist Linda Nickel, who will be talking about how you can recycle paper scraps into art. That one, because it's on Facebook, you just go to Facebook at the time of the program, and the recording will start there. If you do register for that one, you'll get a reminder of the program. And then finally, I wanted to mention Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, More Than Sherlock. This is September 19th at 6:30. And Dr. Thierfelder will be back talking about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and focusing on his works of fantasy and science fiction, as well as nonfiction plays and historical novels that he did beyond his work writing the Sherlock Holmes stories. So that one is on Zoom as well, and so you do need to register to receive the Zoom link. With that, I am going to stop sharing my screen. And I see a question here in the chat about a previous program, Father Dominic's County Fair Foods. It is recorded. I sent out the email to registrants yesterday or this morning, I can't remember which, with the link to the recording. So it is up on YouTube right now if you missed the program or you want to rewatch it. But with that, I am going to turn it over to Angie so that she can share some buzzworthy titles with us.
All right. Thank you, Beth. As Beth said, my name is Angie Strathman. I am the Reader Services Librarian here at Mid-Continent Public Library. And I do this presentation quarterly. For those of you who may not have been here, I try to make sure that the majority of my titles are ones that are available for you to check out right now. But I will also be teasing a few upcoming books that might have a few holds on them to get you excited about some forthcoming things too. And if you have any questions at any time, feel free to put them in the chat. I will be monitoring that, and then Beth can alert me if I miss anything that you might have. It's always easier to answer those questions as I'm talking about the books, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end for questions as well. But I have a lot of fun books I'm excited to share, so let's go ahead and get started. Up first is one of my favorite author discoveries of this year. Jeff Sentner is known for his YA titles, but this is his adult debut, Colton Gentry's Third Act. Colton Gentry is our main character. He has a failing marriage and a flailing career as a minor country star when he drunkenly expresses anti-gun sentiment at one of his concerts to a not very receptive audience. And that goes viral, and he is dropped by both his label and his wife. After a stint in rehab, he returns to his rural Kentucky hometown with no idea how to begin again. But this isn't the first time that Gentry has had to reinvent himself. He was a high school football star, and after an injury, his first love, Luann, who happened to be the inspiration behind his biggest musical hit, was the one who first encouraged Gentry's musical ambitions. But Colton isn't quite sure he has it in him to start over yet again. So he ends up adopting the world's sorriest shelter dog. And the dog won't die. The book's only footnotes promise. And he's floundering until he ends up reconnecting with people from his past and discovers a new creative outlet in the form of cooking. Interspersed, we also get flashbacks to Colton's adolescence and the story of his first love, Luann. Given the author's background, he is also a musician. I was expecting some lovely descriptions of music and of place. One of my favorite parts of his young adult books, in particular his book In the Wild Light, was how lovingly he writes about Tennessee, and he does the same for Kentucky in this book. But I was not expecting this to have such mouth-watering descriptions of food. If the restaurant depicted in this novel actually existed, I would definitely be making a road trip to Kentucky to try it. Colton is a very flawed character who makes some poor decisions and some very corny jokes, but he's also very easy to root for as he starts to get his life back on track and figure out what really matters to him. So this is both a moving story of redemption and of starting over, and also a tender love story in one. And if you have any teens in your life, Colton or Jeff Sentner is going to be here for our Lit Up Festival on September 21st. So be sure to let them know about that. But again, this one in particular is an adult title. Up next, we have Humor Me by Kat Shook. Presley Fry is a talent booker for a late night TV show. So she scouts comedians in order to book them on the show in New York City. She's also navigating a workplace crush, but also more seriously, grief over the loss of her mother, with whom she had a kind of complicated relationship with. All of this has left Presley a little bit, maybe a lot, jaded, and also adrift as she's trying to figure out what's next in store for her. Her mother's friend Susan is also navigating changes of her own, including her husband's involvement in a Me Too-like scandal. And so she also has her own unresolved feelings about the death of Presley's mother and their friendship too. And so the two women, who are both from different generations, end up forming an unexpected bond. This one is for fans of complicated mother-daughter dynamics, unexpected friendships, and messy characters. As Presley is very much a young woman, still figuring things out in life with all of the mistakes that come with that. Humor Me has also been described as a love letter to New York City, especially its comedy scene. And it's very reminiscent of Curtis Sinfeld's recent romantic comedy, which was also set in a late night TV show setting, a Saturday Night Live-esque show, and it has a similar tone as well. I saw in the chat there are a couple of nonfiction readers, and I have my first nonfiction title to share with you. Challenger, A True Story of Heroism and Disaster on the Edge of Space by Adam Higginbotham. This was a riveting work of narrative nonfiction about the space shuttle program and the various forces that aligned that resulted in the tragedy of the Challenger mission. Higginbotham does an excellent job of weaving in the history, the science and technology and engineering details, as well as the political and societal context. And he also brings in the personalities involved seamlessly into a coherent picture of the disaster, and sadly, the many ways it really could have been averted. It was also really fascinating to read this as a story of what happens in a huge bureaucracy and how organizational culture and outside influences affected what went wrong. So the whole thing really reads as this cautionary tale about political pressure, about budget cuts leading to untenable compromises, and failures in organizational communication, as well as decision makers who lacked the necessary expertise to understand the repercussions of their choices. You may recognize the author from writing the best-selling book Midnight in Chernobyl, which was also made into a HBO production. And so he is a excellent chronicler of disasters and the consequences, both the before and after of all of those events. Next up, we have a mystery, Death in the Air by Ram Murali. This is a debut. Ro Krishna is a lawyer who was forced to leave his high-profile job, and so he decides to take some time off, and he retreats to a luxury spa in the Himalayas in order to rest and to recover. The spa, Sansera, attracts all sorts of eccentric and elite characters. So we have actresses and politicians and heiresses and yogis, all gathering together in this reclusive and exclusive setting. It also seems to attract a murderer as the guests at the spa start dying one by one. So the spa owner in this row, who has the legal background, in order to help investigate what's going on. This one has been described as White Lotus meets Knives Out with a dash of Crazy Rich Asians. And the latter is there because there's all that opulence and wealth and designer brands are on display throughout the book. So the characters are not especially likable, but they are fascinating. So you might actually be rooting for their demise and for more of them to disappear. Even Ro might also be harboring secrets of his own, and he is not immune, as you might just find yourself rooting for the killer to continue their spree. Next up, we have a romance, The Art of Catching Feelings by Alicia Thompson. We are in the heart of baseball season, and for once, we can still enjoy watching the Royals at this time of year. But this one is about a fictional team. Shortly after her divorce, Daphne attends a baseball game where she drunkenly heckles a baseball player, Chris Kepler, in a moment that ends up going viral. Chris happens to be having a really bad season, his brother having died by suicide months before, which he's not disclosed to the public or even to his teammates or manager. Afterwards, Daphne feels terrible, and so she crafts this careful DM message to send to Chris, but she ends up editing out her actual apology and identity. And so they end up having this anonymous correspondence, but Chris doesn't know that she is his heckler. He knows her as Ducky, which is her Instagram handle. Through a series of happenstances, Daphne ends up taking a role with the team, and so that puts her in close proximity to Chris in real life as well. But he does not know that she's Ducky and that the two are also having this relationship on social media too. While the deception is not really a strong basis for a potential relationship, Daphne and Chris, despite that, are a winning couple. It also depicts a really sensitive portrayal of Chris's grief over the loss of his brother. And of course, the baseball setting is lots of fun too. So if you like sports romances by writers like Tessa Bailey or Elena Armas or Elle Kennedy, you might want to pick this one up. Up next, we have some fantasy, Archangels of Funk by Andrea Hairston. This is a little fantasy, a little science fiction, a little dystopia. There's some mystery thrown in together. It's very much a genre blend. but it's set in a dystopian world after the water wars and climate change has left societal wreckage behind. Our main character is Cinnamon Jones, and she is setting out for the New World Festival, which is this celebration of music and storytelling that encourages people to honor the past before all of these changes started happening, but also to be able to choose their future and what comes next. Cinnamon is very much an idealist, and so she thinks the worst future she could choose for herself is making no difference whatsoever to this world or the next. Maybe she can make a difference in this one. She tries with the help of some coding, some magic, and a found family. So can she create hope in a world patrolled by nostalgia militia and darknet lords who control the internet and all sorts of information in this dystopian world? This is a really wildly imaginative story set in this really fully realized world, and is also told in very rhythmic prose. It will appeal to readers of Nalo Hopkinson, Nadia Okorafor, and even that kind of slightly hopeful found family-esque part of Station 11. Readers of that might like this as well too. All right, you nonfiction readers, I have yet another title for you. Dogland, Passion, Glory, and Lots of Slobber at the Westminster Dog Show. Tommy Tomlinson is a memoirist, and he spent 3 years behind the scenes of the Westminster Dog Show, learning the ins and outs of the judging and the criteria, the culture surrounding all the participants, as well as the contestants, both the canines and their human handlers. In particular, he spends a lot of time with Stryker and his handler, Laura, who travel from show to show in a motorhome they call Betty White. As you might imagine from the subtitle and its inclusion of lots of slobber, Tomlinson takes an affectionate and kind of irreverent approach to his topic. So if you liked Bianca Bosker's kind of tour of the wine world and Court Dork, or the art world and Get the Picture, that has a very similar kind of irreverent but very immersive tone to it as well. Also, readers, or those of you who love dogs, of course, the memoir Dog Tripping by David Rosenfeld, or even the Christopher Guest movie Best in Show, will want to give this one a try. All right, up next we go from dogs to assassins with Assassins Anonymous by Rob Hart. What's an assassin to do when the thrill of the job is gone? Mark is a retired assassin who attends a 12-step program and has just hit a milestone of 1 year murder-free. As with any 12-step program, he's compiled his list of people he needs to make amends to. But is one of them, or someone else from his past, looking for much more than an apology, perhaps some revenge? So Mark's plans at reform are upended when he finds the roles flipped, when he is attacked and he has to go on the run, including to many exotic international settings. This is a super fun premise filled with both action and humor. So perfect for other books and movies where the good guys and the bad guys are hard to distinguish, and other books and movies that combine both humor and hijinks, suspense, and satire. So if you liked Starter Villain by John Scalzi, or Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn, or even the movie Grosse Pointe Blank, this one would be your next step. All right, for something a little bit more sedate, we have Women and Children First by Alina Grabowski. This is another debut novel. Lucy is a teenager in a small town who dies mysteriously at a house party. And her story is told through the perspectives of 10 girls and women in her town. Half of them are telling the story before Lucy's death, and half of them are telling what happens afterwards. Some of their connections to Lucy are very minor. So one is just a schoolmate, one is a friend of a friend. but others of the narrators are more central. So we also get perspectives from her best friend, her mother, and someone who was a witness to her death. But this book is about much more than just Lucy and her story. The various threads focus not just on Lucy, but on the narrators themselves, weaving together a more rounded picture of girlhood and womanhood through each of these perspectives. We get complicated mother-daughter relationships, we get friendships and rivalries as well. And there are stories centering on inappropriate relationships, betrayals, bullying, privacy, social media, and grief. It also really nails that small town aspect and feeling where you're always wondering how you're perceived and seen, the secrets and rumors, all of the interconnections between the various characters, what everyone knows and what everyone pretends not to know. So the various glimpses of Lucy's story show how we can't truly know what someone else is going through. What you will find instead is a layered and frequently really beautiful story about these 10 women, their strength and struggles. This one would be really great for book groups and for readers who really like books told from multiple perspectives. All right, this next one would also work really well for book groups. We have Fire Exit by Morgan Talty. Our main character in this one is Charles. He is a white man who was raised on a Penobscot reservation by his mother and stepfather, Frederick. But he was forced to leave the reservation after his stepfather's death because he has no genetic ties remaining to the tribe. Charles ends up fathering a child, Elizabeth, with a native woman named Mary. But Mary wants her daughter to be raised Penobscot, so she denies Charles's paternity and marries another man instead. So Charles is a little bit heartbroken. He now lives across the river from the reservation and from his daughter, who is now an adult. So he's kind of seeing her life unfold, watching and longing from afar. And he comes to the conclusion that Elizabeth has a right to know about her history. Charles is also dealing with some other things in his life too. His mother, Louise, is declining due to dementia, and his best friend, Bobby, is struggling with addiction. He's also still dealing with grief over his stepfather's death and questioning his possible part in it. This is a slow developing story, but it touches on lots of themes surrounding belonging and longing, whether it's Charles' loss of his reservation ties, his absence from his daughter's life, or grief over his stepfather and the impending loss of his mother. All right, I saw a couple of you shared some memoirs in the chat, and so I have a memoir here for you. It is Love is a Burning Thing by Nina St. Pierre. And Nina St. Pierre grew up with a troubled mother, Anita, who bounced between lots of homes, between lots of spiritual practices, and many mercurial moods. So Nina had this very kind of unconventional and peripatetic childhood. She lived in 20 different homes by the time she was a teenager, for example. And so she sets out in this memoir to tell the story of her mother. And her mother's story is bookended by two different fires. A decade before Nina's birth, her mother tried to die by self-immolation. So she tried to set herself on fire. The second fire occurs after Nina has become an adult and is left home. And this time, her mother, Anita, is arrested for setting her house on fire. Now that Nina is an adult, she's better equipped to understand her mother and to get her help for her mental health. This is a very moving memoir. It's Nina's attempt to understand her mother and her story, and it's perfect for fans of memoirs of other complicated parent-child relationships. So Alison Bechdel's Fun Home, The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, or Sophia Sinclair's How to Say Babylon. And she also weaves in like some information about fire and the science behind it and things like that. So she weaves in lots of other interesting details as well. Up next, we have another romance, Everyone I Kissed Since You Got Famous by May Marvel. The lives of former high school besties, Katie and Will, have taken divergent paths since they parted ways after high school was over. Katie ended up heading off to Hollywood, while Will stayed behind in Wisconsin, unmoored after the death of her father and in her career as a lawyer. But Will is just starting to achieve some fame of her own. She has a TikTok account where she pledges to kiss 2 new people every week, and that kind of takes off. But one of these kisses go to Katie, who has just come back home to Wisconsin for the first time in a long time. This is a playful rom-com. It will appeal to readers of Casey McQuiston, Meryl Wilsner, or Alexandra Bellefleur, as well as those who enjoy celebrity romances and the friends to lovers trope. And so that celebrity part, we get both the Tinseltown, the Hollywood celebrity, and we also get kind of the new media, TikTok influencer celebrities as well. So you kind of also get the kind of clash between those two. All right. I should have paired this with Love is a Burning Thing because we have another book about fire, in this case, Fighting Them, Devil's Kitchen by Candace Fox. And this one is set within a small group of New York firefighters, but their choice of profession is hiding an ulterior motive. So when they're not fighting fires, they are committing felonies. So they use their access to various places and their insider knowledge in order to pull off heists. So now this 4-person crew is getting ready to pull off their biggest heist yet. They are trying to rip off a storage facility for the city's rich and famous. But they also have a new member to their crew, Andy, who happens to be pulling a con of her own. She's actually undercover, infiltrating the crew. So in addition to the heist, there's also the missing girlfriend of one of the crew members to contend with also. As tensions mount, the twists start coming in this thriller with a tough heroine from Candace Fox, who is a frequent collaborator with James Patterson, who was just here last week. All right, next we have some historical fiction. We have Ella by Diane Richards. Ella Fitzgerald lived a colorful and sad life before even setting foot on stage. And it's Fitzgerald's early life that is the focus of this historical novel, fictionalizing the singer's childhood and early adulthood. If you're not familiar with Ella Fitzgerald's story, her mother died when she was just a teenager, and Ella went to work for the mob in order to support herself. But she gets caught and she's sent into this like infamous prison in upstate New York that treats all of the prisoners very horribly, but she manages to escape and make her way back to the city. And there she starts dancing on street corners in order to make ends meet. And she gets her lucky break by drawing straws to appear at the legendary Apollo Theater. And though she has been dancing, she decides to sing when she gets up on stage. And that launches her career trajectory as a best-selling vocalist. So Richard's novel gives texture to Fitzgerald's origin story, while also bringing to life its setting of 1930s Harlem. Next, we have Allow Me to Introduce Myself by Anya Nwabineli. This one will be really great for book groups. So lots of people think they know Anuri, but really they know the carefully crafted image posted by her stepmother in her influential lifestyle blog. Now an adult, Anuri struggles with self-worth and with trust issues, which she's beginning to believe may have been the result of the disconnect between her private self and the public one that was curated for her. Worse still, she starts to see history repeating itself as her stepmother starts posting about her younger half-sister online. So Inuri seeks to reclaim her own story and protect her sister with the help of her best friends, a lawyer, and her therapist. Nwabineli's debut novel, Someday Maybe, was about a wife who's dealing with grief after her husband dies by suicide. And this one also explores cultural, societal, and family issues through a very personal lens, just like her debut. This one, again, I think would be excellent for book groups because there's lots of things for readers to weigh in on, whether it's the relationship dynamics between the characters, both between Inuri and her stepmother, but also between Inuri and her friends, but also the role of social media in our lives and our right to privacy and to control our own narrative. If you are a science fiction fan, you are probably already familiar with James S.A. Corey, which is actually the pen name for two writers, Daniel Abraham and Anthony Frank. And they write the best-selling The Expanse series, which was very popular and acclaimed, one of the most popular science fiction series of recent years that was also made into a sci-fi channel TV show. Well, lucky readers now get a chance to jump in at the beginning of a new series with the author's new Captive War series. Our main characters in this one are an elite scientific research team on the planet Anjin, which humanity settled a long time ago. So long ago that no one exactly remembers how they got there or why. But Anjin is soon invaded by another alien civilization called the Carricks. Many of the humans are wiped out, but the best and brightest are swept up on ships and sent to the invaders' home planet. There it becomes apparent that the humans of Anjin are just one of many species taken over by the empire of the Carricks, and the researchers are put to work on a scientific task. So we follow this kind of close-knit team that already had this core relationship, and they each have kind of different responses to their capture and to the new events. Some are eager to prove their usefulness in order to save themselves. Some are rebellious and they refuse to work for the captors. Others are just fearful. Only Dathid, who is previously kind of the junior member of the team, really tries to understand their captors, who seem to operate with different motives and communication that differs significantly from how the humans think. And his curiosity just might be the key to their survival. And another possible key to their survival also happened to get smuggled on board alongside the humans. And I won't spoil that for you. This one has a very action-packed opening setup where the plot moves quickly with the Carricks invasion and their journey. It slows down a little bit as the team starts to settle into their new life, and then it ramps back up with a lot of speed and momentum once we start to learn about the Carricks. And it leaves behind plenty of hints and questions for future installments while also wrapping up very satisfyingly in this first book. All right, well, it is August, so it is back to school time. So I wanted to feature this book about teachers, The Faculty Lounge by Jennifer Matthew. This one follows the lives of the teachers, administrators, and staff during one tumultuous year at Baldwin High School. This one reads a lot like an interconnected set of short stories because each chapter focuses on a different staff member. But the loose thread that ties them all together, beyond just their work at the school, is the untimely demise of Mr. Lair, a longtime teacher turned sub, who ends up dying in the faculty lounge and whose memorial causes a lot of controversy with the parents of the students and with the central office. So among the different stories we find, there's a book banning story. There's the story of the principal who started out as a punk rock musician, and then you get to see his evolution to where he ended up. We get the story of a janitor's poignant friendship with Mr. Lair. as well as a vice principal who has an encounter with an unlikely and misunderstood colleague, and a nurse whose care for her students goes beyond dispensing painkillers. Curiously, this is a book set in a high school, but the students are mostly absent. We mostly focus on the adults and their relationships with each other. But occasionally we get a student story too, and they often illuminate the challenges that teachers face, like testing, overbearing parents, challenges to curricula, and the like. So Alexandra Robbins wrote an excellent nonfiction book called The Teachers, and so this would make a really good companion to that book. Also, fans of Abbott Elementary might like this one too, because it's that behind the scenes of the school focusing on the teachers and faculty. All right. One more nonfiction for you. We have Traveling. Wait, did I? Okay. Sorry, my slides are being sluggish. So yeah, I thought I had another one in between there. We also have another short story collection, Highway 13 by Fiona McFarlane. This one is based on a real life serial killer in Australia in the 1990s. So each story in this collection is centered around people who have some kind of very small connection to that event. So most of the stories reflect on people in the periphery of the case. So there's a woman who suspects that her boyfriend might be the killer. You have a couple who tell the story of the woman they encountered who ended up being a victim, an actor who plays the killer in an adaptation. Other stories focus on more central players, like the detective of the case, but it focuses on a different aspect of that character's lives. The result kind of shows this ripple effect. So you get to see the effects of this crime, not just on the people closest to it, like the victims, but the people who might be twice or 10 or 100 times removed from the case. But they still felt the impact, whether it is fear or fascination, or even just a thrill at their small connection to this sensational story. And again, we also have nonfiction. We have the Traveling on the Path of Joni Mitchell by Ann Powers. Ann Powers is one of my favorite people writing and talking about music. So I'm very excited to see her take on the iconic Joni Mitchell. This one is up next on my reading list. Powers is an NPR music critic, so she's the perfect writer to tackle this subject. Among the topics she talks about are Mitchell's early childhood polio scare, as well as her 2015 aneurysm. But we also get her musical journey, her evolution through multiple music genres, and also the many professional and personal relationships she has, like with the other musicians like James Taylor and Brandi Carlile. Powers frames herself not just as a biographer, but as a map maker, exploring the various journeys personally and professionally undertaken by Mitchell throughout her life. All right, so those are the books that are out now, and I always like to leave you with a few teasers of some books to come. And so here are a couple. The first two I've already read, and the first one is This Will Be Fun by E.B. Asher. This is a cozy romantasy that gives off serious Princess Bride vibes, and it was indeed fun. The four saved the realm of Mithria 10 years ago, and then parted ways after one of their own was lost on the quest. The remaining three reacted to the end of their quest in different ways. So we have Claire, who steps in as replacement hero, racking up endorsement deals and seeming to bask in the fame, while also housing hosts of insecurities. Eowyn retreats into isolation. Beatrice opts for security in the form of a boring marriage, but it's also clear that all three miss both the adventure and each other, despite the miscommunication and grudges that exist between them. As the 10-year reunion of their quest approaches, they are summoned back by the Queen for her upcoming wedding, and conveniently, they are brought back just in time when the realm needs saving once again. So this one introduces magic kind of in a tongue-in-cheek modernity way. So you get modern day equivalencies of like Uber and DoorDash, except we use magic to summon them. You have celebrity couple names, ubiquitous coffee shops in every corner. And our heroes rack up endorsement deals and trading cards. So it's got a fun kind of playful vibe to it as well. There's a really fun scene that takes place at a celebrity impersonator convention and the in-world equivalent of Las Vegas. There's also lots of relationship angst in between the action and adventure in the form of two different couples and their potential romances, while they're also figuring out their fractured friendship. And then we also have Colored Television by Danzy Senna. Jane is an author who's working on her second novel. She's been working on it for a decade, not getting very far. She finally takes a stint at this fancy LA friend's house to finish her novel and turns it into her agent, who doesn't like it at all. But Jane has had all these grand ambitions about this new novel bringing her acclaim, financial stability, a permanent spot in this coveted neighborhood where she is ensconced. Her novel was this big, sprawling epic about being biracial in America. And so Jane then turns to her friend's television agent and pins all her hopes on a possible collaboration for a new TV show about what it means to be biracial in America. Like her career, Jane's marriage to her artist husband has seen better days. Jane makes a lot of very questionable choices along the way. So you kind of feel this reckoning coming, even while you're rooting for Jane to get out of the mess and the hole that she's dug herself in. This is sharp and funny, and I really enjoyed that one. I think that one's going to be a big book for this fall. It comes out September 3rd. And then coming in November, I'm looking forward to An Author's Guide to Murder. This one is written by a trio of historical fiction writers, Beatrice Williams, Lauren Willick, and Karen White. They each write historical fiction on their own, but they also sometimes collaborate together to write historical fiction novels. And this time they're turning to a new genre. So this one is part locked room mystery and part literary satire. So there is a murder at the estate of bestselling author Brett Presley, and there are 3 female authors who are teaming up to write a novel who are our main suspects. So it might take some inspiration from real life there. So this one sounds like a lot of fun and coming out in November. And then finally, since you are all here watching a book-related program, I wanted to talk about 2 book-related titles. So we have here The Book Swap by Tessa Bickers. This one comes out September 3rd. So 2 people connect over their anonymous correspondence in the margins of books. So it begins when Erin accidentally leaves her beloved copy of To Kill a Mockingbird in a little free library, complete with all of her personal notes and annotations inside. So she's devastated, but a week later, her copy's back. But this time there's more notes in the margins from someone else. And there's also a copy of Great Expectations that has annotations in it as well. So there's kind of this back and forth trading of books, as well as their notes and thoughts about them through this little free library. And these 2 literature lovers might also have another connection in their lives besides books. And again, nonfiction readers, we also have an equivalent here, The Bookshop by Evan Friss. This one just came out this week. It is a history of the American bookstore. So Friss takes readers through a tour of American bookstores, beginning with Benjamin Franklin opening up a bookshop in Philadelphia, to the present day, following famous bookstores like The Strand in New York, or author Ann Patchett's Parnassus Books in Nashville. But we also get information about other big booksellers like Amazon and Barnes & Noble too. This one is told through a combination of interviews, oral histories, diaries, like municipal records, especially for the historical part. And so this is an ode to the American bookshop. And so that will charm book lovers, learning about the origins of some of their favorite bookstores. So those are the titles I have to share with you this time around. I see Beth has left a note or a link to the book list of all of those titles. So if you didn't catch something you're interested in, you'll be able to click on that and place holds on anything you might be interested in. But if you have any, please let me know if you have any questions or if there are any books that you're excited to get to. Or also, you can share your favorite bookstore in the chat too. That's always fun. I need new ones to check out. All right, Death in the Air. Yeah, any locked room mystery is something that attracts my attention, especially ones that are set in, kind of exotic settings.
I'll also mention that I will email that link to the titles from tonight with the link to the survey following the program.
And I see some returning faces. And so if there are any particular genres that you enjoy, you can let me know and I can make sure I include lots of them in the next version.
I put the link to the survey in the chat again. You can feel free to put that in comments if you want, or in the chat this evening. And just as a reminder, the recording will be available on YouTube. I will email everybody out a link to the recording once it is available, and the link to the playlist of past ones if you want to go back and look for some titles you may have missed. All right, well, seeing nothing in chat, did you have any final thoughts, Angie?
No, I just thank you so much for your time and attention. I love to talk about books, and so I'm excited to have people here who are interested in hearing about them.
Well, we appreciate you doing this, and I know I added a number to my to-be-read list this evening. So thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you, Angie, for sharing some great titles with us. And have a great evening, everybody. Good night.